know, and so they is somebody else, right?
Right.
But you can only talk about yourself and in first terms. So I want you to really think about these three worlds and how much are you, especially and the reason I'm bringing this up this one here, because a lot of you in here are technologists, and technologists can get really stuck, as I said, in the it world. But great leadership doesn't come from the it world. Great leadership comes from people, you know, the I's and the we's and the relationships. So if you're too much stuck in it, start relating, you know, start getting back to these other areas. So there's something called resonance. It's getting in sync with somebody, okay? And dissonance is out of touch, discordant, just a couple definitions, all right? So there's this like amazing thing that happens in the brain is when we start relating, there's actually like these neural pathways that are kind of going off, and there's this, like the energy that is transferring to people, and it's not something that we like think about every day, but it's truly real. That there's something going on that when you're relating with somebody, there's literally a connection being made between your two brains. It sounds strange, but if you step back and you think about it, isn't that really what's happening? Yeah. And so if you want to start relating more, you've got to start to get in touch with the individuals that you're working with and working around, and you've got to figure out how to do that better. What are some of the ways that you can start relating to the people around you? Any thoughts, by the way? Initial thoughts and ideas?
Talking to them.
Yeah. Talking to them.
Not being professional.
Yeah, exactly. Stop being so professional. Yeah. Just, you know, trying to learn people more fundamentally, who they are, what they're about, right? What's important to them. Asking them those kind of questions can really help. It's that getting that attunement going on, that resonance, where you can relate better. This is a quick tool I wanted to show you that I remember using actually as part of a technology transfer. I know it sounds funny, but it was like, so stuck in our it world. Does anybody really know how much you care? Because caring is important for relating, and caring is important for resonance. And if somebody doesn't know that you care, then all sorts of bad things actually can start happening. So this relationship continuum, I don't know if you can see the words as clearly, but it kind of goes up from I don't care, but I want you to care about me and my issues. It's all about me. And then it goes on to, you know, oh, I just don't care. I don't care, but I want you to think I care because I'm supposed to care, right? You're supposed to care about me. I try to care because you care. I care, but you can't tell that I care. I care, but I don't always take the time to show you. But if you really start moving up and continue, I care, and it's readily apparent that I care. Like, if you're managing a team, and just say, let's say you have a set of employees, and you know, you really appreciate them and the work that they do. But do you tell them? Did you tell them that you care? And that you're grateful and thankful for what they do? It matters a lot. You know, often it's the difference between them going home and feeling like they had a successful day and not. So the relating part a lot can be just quite simply explaining to somebody to what level that you care. You know, expressing that genuinely in a meaningful way to them. Now we're going to do something a little bit different here too. Relating can also be telling your story. And so I shared my story in the beginning with you. And leadership a lot of times is about storytelling. So we're best then to start then with you, right? What's your story? Where did you grow up? What influenced your direction? What do you like to spend your time on? What are your passions, by the way? How would others describe you? So, not your name, but your story. Take just a minute and try to write down your story. And then I'm going to actually have you share it with the person next to you, just for practice. Why? Because this whole idea is that we have to practice these things. And sometimes it can be, I don't want to like trivialize this. It can be really hard to tell your story. Sometimes. You know, maybe you've never really done it before. Maybe it's uncomfortable to you. Maybe it's something that you have to figure out. And maybe, by the way, your story is not exactly the same for each individual you're in front of and a group that you're in front of, and that's okay. Meaning, you know, there's many dimensions of ourselves to bring out and highlight at the right times. But perhaps the best thing that you can do is to start to figure out what are the fundamental things that you want to share with somebody about who you are and where you came from and what you're all about and what you're doing and where you're going, so they have a sense of who you are. And that will help them relate to you a lot if they understand more about you. So telling your story becomes a big part of leading yourself and leading others. Maybe some of it you haven't even connected some of the dots for yourself, right? Which is, again, going back to even things like passions. Do you know what they are? Can you share them with somebody? And if not, that's okay. This is where you're starting from. But maybe you can make some headway on that. Do a better job of explaining that in the future and help people relate and connect with you. A lot of times people will find the most uncanny things that they can connect on, right? Maybe there's somebody in your work environment that you don't get along with particularly well, but who knows? Maybe you both have the same hobby and it's photography. You wouldn't know until you start talking to them, right? And maybe that's a point at which you can start to relate or connect. So looking for those points where you can start to connect to people is an important part of your job to lead yourself and to lead others. Does that make sense? Okay, so do you have a story that you can share with your neighbor? Okay, take a minute just to share your story. It's not a lot of time to tell your life story. Try.
Story.
It's really hard to cut it off, right? That was quick, right? That was hard to make the story into quick. But I know we're running short of time. So, what I want to ask you is, how did it feel to share your story? Feels good? For anybody, did it feel maybe awkward to share your story? Around yourself. Well, exactly. Yes, it is the whole idea of hearing yourself say something that you maybe didn't even know that you thought. Or sometimes connecting the dots and going, oh gosh, yeah, I didn't remember that this influenced that, and that's how my life kind of came together, right? And connecting those dots. So sometimes it feels easy and good, sometimes maybe it feels awkward, but I think just getting in the practice of being willing, right, to share your story will help you relate. Now, do you think that you could relate better now to the person who's sitting next to you when you see them next time? Yes. You besties now. That was easy. Good. Professional storytellers. Everything comes right here. All right, I know that we are short on time, and I'm going to try to push us through, but this is kind of a meaty section, so I'm going to do my best to push us through a meaty section, but this is about conflict. And so this topic, we again could spend all day, all week talking about it, but there's just a few key concepts that I want you to come away from today with relative to conflict, because conflict tends to be one of those areas where we, fail at relating, okay? Because conflict is something that's uncomfortable for us human beings. And this is a picture of what our brain looks like when we're in normal and low emotion, calm and relaxed, and then a picture of the brain when we're in high emotions, anger, fear, excitement. I love this, that love is on here. When love is on, this is the message. When you're in these high emotions, your higher cortex, your executive functioning of your brain, basically shuts down. Okay, that's how it works. It basically shuts down, so everything kind of gets stuck at the brainstem level, at the amygdala level, and you don't go up and use that higher level functioning as human being. And so, because of this, basically, because of what actually happens with us in these as human beings, we often get these breakdowns. Of course, what happens when we have conflict, and there's all sorts of things that can trigger conflicts, and these are like some top 10s, right? Feeling spoken to in a condescending way, lack of respect, being treated unfairly, being unappreciated, and the list goes on, right? The number of things that can cause conflict is high. And there is a quote from Aristotle that I think is brilliant in so many ways. And here's the quote, and I want you to think about it as I say it, and I want you to think about what you think it means, okay? Quote, anybody can become angry. That's easy. But to be angry with the right person, and to the right degree, and at the right time, and for the right purpose, and in the right way, that is not within everybody's power, and it's not so easy. So if you had to put your own words to that, what do you think that means? Sorry?
You just cannot get mad with all that right levels of
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we're mad and it's coming out and people think it's all about them, and it's it has nothing to do with them. Maybe you're mad about something that has nothing to do with, you know, even what happened that day. Maybe it happened yesterday. I mean, the thing is, we're really complex human beings, and figuring out this conflict thing is not easy, like even for ourselves emotionally, because a lot of times, you know, again, because this like top part of our brain kind of shuts off, and we're in this different mode, and it's hard to figure out what's going on. But I think what the beauty of this, and what Aristotle is basically saying here, and way back in his time that he was catching on to, was this idea of EQ. That, you know, really, you have to drive to a higher level of EQ for yourself, emotional intelligence, by really thinking through, when you're mad, what are you really mad about? And who's it really about? And where did it start? Where did it come from? And so, you know, this concept of, you know, if you want to work through a conflict, you're going to have to start getting better at managing conflict with yourself first. Think that same message, right? How good am I figuring out when I'm mad, why I'm mad, or when I'm in conflict, how I'm going to deal with that conflict. So let's talk about managing conflict for just a minute. I want you to start thinking, for you as a leader, to lead yourself and to lead your team and others. When you're managing conflict, who do you want to be? What kind of person? How do you want to come off to others? What standards will you hold? And sometimes, by the way, and this is an important one for you to think about, what help should you get? Because sometimes it's not always good to just work on the conflict yourself. Sometimes you really need to have somebody who can help you think it through. Sometimes somebody to maybe even get in the middle of it and kind of like help disperse it, right, or redirect it. But for those times that you start to be in conflict, to be able to step back, and again, using that I'm the observer, right, and think, what needs to happen here? How can I be different? How can I manage it better? So these are just some thoughts that I want you to start thinking about relative to relating. And so relating authentically is something that, again, we could talk on and on for. It's something that's sometimes hard to do, but I want you to pick that one thing that you can take away from tonight that you can do better. How can you be more authentic? What can you do tomorrow at 8 a.m.?
Well, at least you didn't say 5.
Right. And I'm not going to even have you all share, because we're going to forge ahead to one more section, okay? Because I just want to be able to share this with you and make sure that we get some key concepts for engagement. And I know there was some, you know, previous comments about engagement. Engaging yourself and engaging others. And this is a quote from Steve Jobs: "The only way to do great work is to love what you do," right? So how do you get to engage? Sometimes engaging yourself is easy, especially when you love it, but, you know, maybe if you don't, then how do you get yourself more engaged? Some of you may have seen these Gallup polls before. They've been out for a number of years, and, you know, it's used a lot for organizational development to help people understand that, you know, there's a really big part of our workforce that is disengaged, okay? Meaning, you know, they're really not present and really working on those CSIs. They're really kind of, you know, doing something else. There's a percentage, you know, 19%, who are actively disengaged, which means not only are they like not doing what they're supposed to be doing in their work, they're actually working against the company. Okay? That's a high percentage, 19%. And only like 26%, you know, of people are actually engaged in the work that has to be done. And so you see, by the way, 2 statistics here in each of these pie pieces, and I want to share with you what that is. This is an article that just came out that basically said there was a new Gallup poll, and it was done only for college students. So it like took a sample of 30,000 college students. And so as these college students went out into the workforce, they measured, okay, how many of them are disengaged, engaged, actively disengaged. And at least what you saw is a higher number, okay? It's actually the number on the right, so they engage. A higher number of those with the college degrees were engaged, okay? And that means probably because they were studying a field that they liked and passionate about getting in the workplace and using it. But these numbers overall, you know, they don't look that great. So you kind of have to wonder and ask yourself, you know, which one are you? You know, because we like to think that that's not us. That's not me who's not actively engaged, or maybe even actively engaged, but maybe it is. And ask yourself that hard question. And what about your team? Can you look in your team and see that? Do you see active engagement, or do you see that some individuals were just not engaged? And so what do you start to do about that as a leader? So here's some tools that I want you to start thinking about. Motivators, strengths, vision, and we're going to go through these. So it's best if your work aligns to your natural motivators. It's best if what you're doing you're doing because it's just innate in who you are and you can't help doing it. And there's different tools, right, that you can use to discover what these things. This particular one is a list of attitudes or hidden motivators from TTI, which is Target Training International, who basically does studies on these types of things and has come up with these. There's a whole history to this, by the way, where this comes from. But these basic attitudes, and you know, there are tools that you can use to help figure out which one of these are you. Like if you look up at this list and you look through these descriptions, can you pick the top 2? Who are you? And are you using those in your job today? And if you're not, you might want to start thinking about how we can change your job or what you can do to start using your natural motivators, because it's inherent in just who you are. That's who you really want to do. Who you want to be, what you want to do. Now, strengths is another one, and there's a lot more than talked about in recent years about strengths. And there's the book by Buckingham about discovering your strengths, and it's a nice, easy tool, right? So you can come up with a list of your strengths. Then there's more advanced tools. TTI has some other ones, have one. But the question for you is, do you really know what your strengths are? Do you know what your motivators are? And if you don't, I would suggest you spend some time figuring those out, because it's going to help you with your engagement. And if you figure that out for your team and help your team, like there was a person who said they love to help other people figure out their path, right, and what they're good at and all. And so you're kind of naturally inclined, right? This is a social kind of element, and I'll let you do these hidden motivators, right? Yeah, so you know what that is, right? And so if you can be doing that as part of your job, you're going to be that much more engaged. And so for your team, can you help them figure out their strengths and their hidden motivators and help them leverage that in the work that there is to be done? There's a lot of power that comes from that. There's an enormous potential that can be, transferred into energy when people start playing with their strengths. The last thing that we're going to talk about is vision. And vision can get tricky because, again, this is one of those that it's like requires you to really step back and to reflect and to maybe go someplace you don't usually go and think about what is it that you wish to create in the future for the next 5 to 10 years for yourself, for your team. If you don't know where you're going for yourself, then who's going to tell you how to get there, what it is? You have to have a sense of direction for yourself, a vision for where you want to go, and for your team. And if you haven't started to do that, then just take some time to start to do that. And it's really just asking yourself that question. So vision's not just a picture of what we could be, it's an appeal to our better selves, a call to be something more. And can you appeal to yourself to be something more, to set a higher vision for yourself that you can start moving towards? And what I want to share with you that's really important relative to your teams and leading your teams is that engagement and that whole idea of getting people more actively engaged has a lot to do with if you have a vision for them and you're sharing them and actively engaging them in that vision. So the statistics are, this is Right Management Associates, 67% of employees do not know or understand the employer's business strategy or vision. 67, 2/3, don't know what it is. 28% of the organization limits strategy, vision, communications to only leadership teams. So is it any wonder why so many people are not engaged or actively disengaged if nobody's sharing what the vision is with them? 24% have not yet communicated the vision at all to their employees. Do has a vision been communicated to you in your work group? And do you know what it is? If you do, beautiful, right? You can share it with more people. If you don't, it's a question to kind of go back and ask. But again, always start from self first, right? Where's your vision for yourself, for your team? Because it doesn't have to be the organization's vision that's posted on a on a big placard somewhere. It can be really more at an individual level, and you have to figure out how that's going to inspire you to move forward. So engaging yourself and others, I want to have you take 30 seconds and think about, do you know your motivators? Do you know you have a vision for yourself? Do you understand what your strengths are? What can you do to help advance these things? And then what can you do to help advance it in your team? And does anybody already know what they want to do next about this? Any thoughts? What's on your action plan? Getting tired now, aren't you? Okay, well we're going to wrap it up because I know it is getting late. So just a quote to leave you with. Our greatness lies not so much in being able to remake the world as in being able to remake ourselves. Again, it's that whole concept of start with yourself first. If you can really start leading yourself better. That leadership of your group and the others around you will come much more naturally. So this action plan that you built tonight, make it meaningful. You know, take it back to your office, post it next to your computer or someplace that you can refer back to it, and use that as a memory tool for the things that you want to start to work on. But most of all, figure out what is that thing that you're really, really committed to, right? With a great level of depth and emotion. Because when you can really figure that one out and start applying all of these concepts to that one thing, that's where your power really comes from and begins. That's when things will shift and change and move. And that's when you're going to start creating amazing change for yourself and for the people around you. So that's the message that I want to leave you with today. You know, if it's a matter of, these are some of the things that you want to have help on, support on, either all sorts of ways to stay in touch and some ways that we can go about doing that. These are some of the services that I offer. But I also, most of all, encourage you to leverage this group, the Witty group, to have conversations like this, to tell your story, to practice some of these skills. It's a safe environment to be able to do that. And so with that said, in your folders, there's one more piece of paper that you have in there, which is, I would love to have your feedback from tonight, which is whatever your biggest takeaway is from today's session. It could be anything of all the many things that we've discussed. And if you're willing to share with me your name and your email, I will be sure to send you a thank you gift, which is a quote book. It's not in there. Your feedback sheet is not in there? No. Oh my. Okay, well, we'll have to do that electronically then. Okay, we'll figure that out. So, thank you so much for, I'm sorry? But you have my card and you can send me an email. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.